Greetings out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man. I hope my mic is hot. And thank you for coming to my channel. I had a subscriber mention to me or ask me, because I had mentioned to in the video, I said, things don't stay the same. If I had my way, it'd still be 1984. And he said, why is that? So he said, please explain. So I'll oblige that. I think everybody has a era in their life that they would like to return to, a favorite era when everything was just seemed to be clicking, everything's working. And for me, it was the 80s, and for many reasons, because, as far as what's going on today, it's like back in the 80s, you would have never thought that in about 20 years, you get a group of stupid ass guys that want to take your car. For no reason. You spend hard-earned money on your stuff and somebody think that they got the right to just take your car. And then you got these kids doing it. You got kids that are 14 years old taking cars, grand theft auto. That's a serious offense. When I was 14, what was on my mind was delivering my papers and chasing little girls. Or chasing girls my age. I never, in my wildest dream, would have been thinking about committing a heavyweight crime. The worst kind of crime I think that a 14-year-old should be doing, like in my day, was stealing candy from the store. 2 pieces of candy run out. That was our crime. Instead of, I'm going to go up to a grown-ass man because I got a gun that some fool gave me and take his car. And you get serious time for that, And it's not like you're going to keep the car. I'm going to take the car and drive it around for 7-8 months. Because I remember this guy stole my wife's car. This guy stole her father's car. And this guy, he stole it to be stealing. They caught him 2 months later driving back and forth to work in the car. So he planned on keeping the car. I'm like, well, that does make sense, even though it's crazy. But this carjacking nonsense, you keep the car for an hour, until they catch you and you jump out and you run, And that's just one of many things of today that's just so disheartening. It's like, come on, And I gotta say this because, I keep it real. It's our kids doing this. It's not a whole bunch of white kids and a whole bunch of Mexicans. It's our kids. So what does that tell us? We are not doing our fucking job as parents. And the reason why is a 14-year-old in most cases, and not all, you go home to his mama just 16 years older than him. Living with her mama. Both of them. What happened to the boyfriend or the husband? Grandmama now is the new surrogate father. That's the term I phrase. Because now you go into these black households versus the 60s. And I've made this description before. Or example, you go back into the 60s and you ask the little black kid, draw your family structure. They draw mama. They draw themselves. They draw daddy. And you ask a young black kid, in not all cases, but a lot of cases, draw your family structure. They draw mama. Again, they draw themselves. Then they draw grandmama. What the hell is daddy? Where's the husband? Where's the boyfriend? That's the new black family structure. We got to get our act back together and go back to the original family structure instead of this. My 15-year-old daughter is out there having sex in my house when I'm out there. Here comes the baby. We got to stop this. This is our fault. We can't blame anybody else. Picking into the police. We need more cops on the street. You don't need more cops. You need more parents to whoop these kids' asses and keep them in place and check. That's what we need. The police department is not at fault because your kids are out there committing crimes. That's the last thing that the black community needs is more policing. Because you see how good that's working. Hello? Okay? So we need to be more responsible, But anyway, sorry for that rant. But, we all have our different favorite eras. And, the 80s was my era for just the reasons I just gave you. It wasn't as crazy as it is now. The black family structure's gone to hell, and you got your kids out there taking people's cars, But for the reason of the music, for me, that's why 80s, 84, 80 was more favorable. I'm a guitar player by trade, by profession. But if I had my way, I would have been a great piano player because I love the keyboard. You can do so much with synthesizers. When synthesizers really kind of kicked in full gear, the late 70s, the early 80s, it was wonderful, and I play well enough to play, but I don't play as well as I play my guitars, And old school funk, Larry, shout out to Larry, was one of the few people, actually one of the only person that caught my style of playing. He said, you play like you're playing keyboards on guitar. You are absolutely right, Larry. And that was done deliberately because I love the sounds of keyboards. I love the way that they fall into the mix as far as laying chords, still bouncing hard, So I tried to play in that style, even though I'm not a keyboard player, And when I started getting these synthesizers, because for a long time, when synthesizers kicked in, the bass players stopped eating. The guitar players stopped eating. I said, shit, I better start playing more board. So I started to play keyboard, and I didn't tell anybody that I played guitar because I'm like, I don't want to lose this gig because they know. And when I start playing guitar, then I'm a much better guitar player. Like, this is a guitar player. Just fumbling around on keyboard. So I didn't tell anybody. I literally took my guitar and put it up under my bed for a couple of years. For years. Because I'm like, I'm a keyboard player. I can do the synth lines, not so much the heavy chordal fingering of piano players, because back then there was two keyboard players. It was the guy that laid down the fingering key parts, and then it was the other guy that played the synth parts, and he didn't have to do that much, so that's what I did. And then sometimes I would do synthesized bass parts on the keyboard because I could do that well, So for years I played nothing but boards. 95% of the stuff that I write and have been charted and have been sold and published, I created on the keyboard, because you can do so much with all these different sound palettes. It's just these sound patches are so beautiful. And a lot of times when I get a new synth module and I play, these patches, just the patch alone inspires me to write. I hear stuff when I start to play with these certain patches. So that's why, the 80s was so dear to me, because for the most part, the social climate was tolerable, because I'm sure back in the 80s was more dangerous than it was back in the 50s. Somebody from the 50s would say it was better here than it is now. I totally understand, totally agree. But for me personally, the 80s was the thing, I was going to so many weddings back then because everybody's falling in love and going to, getting married, and we go to these weddings. I remember one year, me and my wife went to about maybe 10 weddings. Now at the age I am now it's just the opposite. Now we're going to more funerals. It's like, man, this is just so sad that the evolution of life, If you live long enough, we all are going to experience these high points and these low points. When you get older, start to develop health issues, get older, get sick, then you die, but that's just how it works, and no one is exempt from that. But that's the reason why the 80s was so dear to me. I was younger. Everything was on the upcline. Music was just right. I look at it, and I do need to touch on this, then I'm going to sign off. I told you about, and this will make a good comedy skit. Your father's sitting in the driver's seat and you sitting in the passenger seat, and you turn the radio to your stuff, and he said, "This is garbage." Billy Eckstein and all these other great artists from the 50s. That was music, young man. This is garbage. And then you fast forward 20 years later. You're the father now, or you're a father. You're in the driver's seat, and your son is in the passenger seat, and he turns from your music to this music, and I make this statement: Teddy Pendergrass is great, and this stuff you listen to now is garbage. And that's a matter of opinion. But now it's a little different because, like the scenario I just gave you guys, whether you like this style of music or this era or not, all of those players from your father's era and your era were players. They were musicians. They knew what they were doing. Now, fast forward 20, 30 years later, it's a different argument, because what's going on now, and it's so sad because this is kind of killing R&B to me. And I give you an example, and I use rock music as an example. Whether it's 1960 rock music or 2021 rock music, it still works the same. And what I mean by that is, back then and now, you had real drummers. Drum machines have not replaced rock drummers, and they never will. You had real bass players, 60s up, and even now. Everything is still authentic. But R&B music, 60s, nothing but acoustical, real instruments, drummers, bass players, horn section. Now, drum machines, synthesizers that's mocking horn lines. And that's fine. But here's the problem now. Now you have this thing where a lot of these young artists, they're not, or musicians, they're not musicians. All they're doing is piecing together real musicians' compositions and calling it their own, royalty free. Because now they got what's called the MIDI pack. You get these chord progressions that were performed by a professional musician, royalty free. He gives it to you, and you piece them together and call it your creation. But you ain't played a finger on this stuff. This ain't being a musician. This is just putting together somebody else's, or piecing together somebody else's compositions. And they want to call themselves musicians, artists, and producers. You ain't produced nothing. You just chain together somebody else's stuff. I think a lot of these guys don't even know what producer means. So let me give you an example or definition, because I'm a producer. First I was a musician, and then I became a songwriter, then I became a producer. The producer is responsible for arranging the song. And I would like to say that the arranger, because I think they just given a new name, because back in the 60s it was musical arranger. It wasn't producer, it's musical arranger. It's the same thing, they just gave it a different title. And I give you an example of being a producer. The first production outside of my own compositions I did, I had this very talented lady and her cousin. They were a duet, because duets were hot back in the 80s. Yarbos and Peebles, Renee and Angela, the list goes on. So a friend of mine from the neighborhood came to me and said, I got this act that I'm managing. I want you to produce their stuff because they've already written it. I'm like, cool. And this was my first assignment outside of my own stuff. So they came in, they let me hear it, and I made some changes that enhanced it. And when I originally suggested these, they were a little apprehensive. It's like, I'm like, trust me, because the demo that they gave me, the female who's singing lead, she was also singing in the background with her cousin. I said, well, first thing I want to do, because I hear this, I want to take you out of the background and let your cousin do 2-part harmony with himself, because this song, especially when you're doing it live, you are going to be showcased as the lead singer. So we don't want you here and back there too. Then they sometimes they do that in the studio to save money or whatever. But I'm like, when it comes time to do this live, you should have 2 guys back doing harmony, or maybe a female and a guy. But I'm like, this is what I want to do, and I think this works. And once we finished the project, because I did a lot of other things too, I wrote in some parts to the song that they had already written too. I wrote in a string line, orchestra part, and also I wrote in the guitar part, and I wrote in the bass line. So, because they mainly composed it on piano, so I had to expand it. So when we finally finished the product, the lead singer, or the female, she was so happy she cried, because she's like, wow, she could hear now the whole big picture. We just brought it to life. It was already living, but we just took it to another level of life, and it just really impacted her. And it made me feel good, because I'm like, I did something so well that somebody was just so happy with it that it moved them to tears. And I was like, you got talent, you and your cousin, you guys got talent. So the only thing I had to do was just enhance it. I didn't have to do anything out of the ordinary. But that's what a producer does. He arranges, he writes, he reads. But these young guys, I'm a producer. Producer of what? Putting together somebody else's bits and pieces? I more or less want to call you Dr. Frankenstein, because that's all you did was just put these things together. But you had no hand in creating these things. You didn't play any chords. You didn't play no bass. You didn't play at all, And I'm not knocking the young folk stuff, but I'm saying players used to play. Now these people that want to call themselves artists, they can't play. They can't read. They know nothing about theory. I had this one rapper, and I realized why nobody wanted to work with this guy, because he's an idiot. He thinks he knows everything when he knows shit. And I'm like, I've been doing this for 20-some, 30 years, dude. So I think I know what I'm kind of doing. I was been able to eat well doing this, And I'm going to say this, then I'm going to sign off. He came to me with a demo, and he wasn't a bad rapper. And I listened to it. I said, well, first of all, what I hear is you're not familiar with format and structure of song. You don't just have all these weird type of timed bars coming in out of too long, too short. And I said, your intro is far too long, I said, I'm going to prove a point to you. I said, pull up any song right now on YouTube, any song. And most likely it's going to be a song I'm not familiar with. I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. So he pulled up a Drake song. I had never heard this Drake song. And when it came on, I'm doing this, I'm counting. You don't know what I'm doing. And then I did this. Then Drake kicked in. That's what I'm talking about. You got to know when to come in. Now, sometimes they prolong it to kind of add a buildment of incitement deliberately. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. They're just doing something clever. But this guy didn't know what he was doing. It's like, you're not familiar with structure of song. You're not familiar with time signatures. You're not familiar with bars, 16 bars, 8 bars, 24 bars, or whatever. And you got to work on that, because there's a format and a formula that most of us, we work by. We don't just do something totally out of the ordinary unless you're Al Green, because Al Green has a very unique song structure. Very unique. I hate doing Al Green songs. I love his stuff. Hate doing it because it's like normally you play, it's like, okay, something else is about to happen here where we're just going to prolong what we're doing. All of a sudden, something totally different happens here. It's like, what was that? And then it goes back into something else. And it's like, we supposed to be here according to structure, but we somewhere else. That's just Al Green writing style. It's not that he's inept as far as creating, because we know that's not the truth, But that's just his unique writing style. But this young guy that thought he knew what he's talking about didn't have a clue what he's talking about. And I'm like, I'm not trying to give you a tongue lashing, dude, because we all start at the beginning, But I'm telling you what you need to work on, And I quickly tried to pawn him off on somebody else because I'm like, I don't want to work with him. I don't even like him. That's another important thing. You got to kind of like the people you work with, unless you're getting super big paychecks to keep your mouth closed and just do your job, and that's not the case. But I'm going to sign off now, but that's why the 80s was real dear to me. Just an era of calmness for the most part. Again, there hasn't been any time recently that everything across the globe is just beautiful, wonderful, and nonviolent. But now it's just gotten out of control. And we as black people, we need to get our act together. We need to stop blaming the mayor. We need to stop blaming the police department. We need to stop blaming everybody else. Half the people that go out there with the picket signs talking about stop the violence, they got people in their household that are creating the violence, okay? Go home and do your fucking job. Instead of blaming somebody else or the mayor again or the police department, because the police department is not responsible for raising your kids. If you do a good job, in most cases, your kids and the police would never even see each other, together, it's just the way it is. And I'm not going to sit here and say that what some police officers do is not right. I agree. There are a lot of dirty cops out there, racist cops, that we need to get them off the force. Really, it made me cry when I seen Mr. Floyd down there dying. I mean, I cried. I was like, what the fuck? Have we come to this? This man didn't even do anything. And if he did anything, which he didn't do anything, it didn't want this man to be murdered. I mean, that man was murdered, you know, and it hurts, you know, but we all just got to get our act together. We all need to be responsible for what we need to be responsible for, and things will get better on both sides, because it's kind of hard to become a victim when you're in the house. Not 100%, because sometimes bullets come through the window and hit innocent people. But we got to take ownership. And I'm going to say this and then I'm going to leave it. I'm going to set off. The way that it looks outside, the way that it should look outside right now for the next maybe 3 months, because the cavalry's coming in the form of a vaccine. It should look like the day of the Super Bowl. And I don't know if you guys noticed that, but most of y'all noticed that and know what I'm talking about. You look out your window, Super Bowl day, Super Bowl event as it's going on, ain't nobody outside. Ain't no traffic, nobody walking, everybody ass in the house watching their TVs. That's the same way it should look right now during this pandemic. Have your ass in the house when you don't have to have your ass outside your house. And still, I'm going to ignore that and just still go visit my friends and do all this other stuff and be outside. You know? It's just real simple. Get the fuck in the house. Unless you got to go out there to get grocery, go to the doctor or essential things. But you still got people trying to live the life of 2019. You know, I think it's going to come back. It will come back. But we got to help it come back quicker by taking our ass in the house. You know, I see people still hanging out and visiting their friends, and some of them don't even have masks on, you know? So we got to be responsible. All of us. It takes all of us to do this, not just a handful of people that's diligent trying to get it back right. It takes everybody, because when you don't participate, it doesn't work, or it takes much longer. And during that time, more people are dying. You know, this ain't no joke. People are dying. They're not just getting sick and coming back, or dying and coming back. They're dying. They say that there are more people that have died from this virus than the casualties of soldiers in World War II. So this is World War III, if y'all don't notice. This is World War III. And it's launching an attack on everybody on this planet. It ain't just two countries going to war and killing each other. You know, to me, war is stupid anyway. But we got to get our act together. We got to come together, because this benefits everybody. And it affects everybody. Till next time, take care and thanks for watching.